Today we're diving into a truly incredible story of survival at sea. It's an account by Gordon Cook and Alan East, and honestly, the title alone tells you everything you need to know about the human spirit when it's pushed to the absolute limit.
Just think about that for a second. This one sentence, spoken by a 6-year-old boy in the middle of a killer storm, is really the heart of this entire story. It asks a pretty profound question, right? What is it that gives us the strength to face our deepest, darkest fears? So, let's get into the journey that led to this unbelievable moment.
You know, every epic struggle has to start somewhere, and for this family, it didn't begin with a disaster. It started with a dream.
So picture this. It's July 1976. A 37-year-old businessman, his wife Mary, and their 2 little kids set sail from England. And their goal? Well, it was beyond ambitious. They wanted to recreate Captain James Cook's famous round-the-world voyage. This was no spur-of-a-moment thing either. For 16 years, 16, they had poured every bit of their free time into this, perfecting their skills on the water, all for this one massive 3-year journey.
Their ship was called the Wave Walker, a beautiful, sturdy, 23-meter, 30-ton wooden boat. They'd spent months testing it in the absolute worst weather they could find, just to make sure she was ready. So you had the family, the narrator, Mary, 7-year-old Suzanne, and 6-year-old Jonathan. And to help them tackle the southern Indian Ocean, which is notoriously dangerous, they brought on 2 pros, Larry and Herb. I mean, they were about as prepared as anyone could possibly be.
The first part of their trip, it went off without a hitch, exactly as they planned. But as they left Cape Town and started heading east, well, that dream was about to smash headfirst into the brutal reality of one of the world's roughest seas.
Now, the narrator was no amateur. He was a seasoned sailor, so when strong winds started picking up, he wasn't really worried at first. He'd prepared for rough weather. But what he wasn't prepared for, what nobody could ever be prepared for, was the sheer, terrifying power of the ocean unleashed.
The waves swelled to 15 meters. Okay, to put that in perspective, that is as high as their ship's main mast. Can you just imagine that? You're standing on the deck of your boat, and you look up to see a moving wall of water the size of your own mast coming right for you.
By January 2nd, the situation was looking grim. The crew did exactly what they were trained to do. They slowed the boat down, tied down every single piece of equipment, went through their emergency drills step by step, and got into their survival gear. And then, all they could do was wait.
And then, something changed. Around 6 in the evening, this eerie, ominous silence just fell over everything. The wind just died. The sky got dark. It was like the whole world was holding its breath.
He looked out, and with his dawning horror, he realized that what was rising up behind their ship, it wasn't a cloud. In his own words, it was a wave like no other he had ever seen. It looked perfectly vertical, almost twice the height of the already huge waves. It was a monster.
The impact was just apocalyptic. A massive explosion shook the whole deck as the wave came crashing down. The narrator's head smashed into the wheel, and he was literally lifted up and thrown overboard into that churning, freezing water. And as he was sinking under the waves, starting to lose consciousness, he said this weird sense of peace came over him. He was completely, totally sure that his life was over.
But it wasn't over. In a stroke of pure luck, another wave threw him back toward the boat. His lifeline went taut. He managed to grab a guardrail and was just tossed around the deck like a rag doll. Breaking ribs, cracking his teeth. The wave was gone, but the real fight for survival, that had just begun.
The state of the Wave Walker was just catastrophic. The starboard side was completely bashed in, letting tons of water pour in every time a wave hit. The boat's main structural frame was smashed. Below deck, it was total chaos. Clothes, food, the kids' toys, all just floating around in the deep, rising water.
What came next was an 18-hour nightmare fueled by pure willpower. Larry and Herb are pumping water like their lives depended on it, because they did. The narrator, even with all his injuries, somehow managed to stretch canvas over the massive holes. They were sending out mayday calls, but out there, in that remote part of the ocean, there was just silence. No one heard them.
In the middle of all this chaos, the narrator went to check on his kids. His daughter Suzanne had this huge bump over her eyes. Her head was swollen, she had 2 massive black eyes and a deep cut on her arm. When her dad asked why she hadn't said anything more about how bad it was, her reply was, well, it was just astounding. For 15 hours straight, they just fought.
They finally managed to get the water level under some kind of control. But the boat was literally falling apart. The narrator knew they were never going to make it to Australia. And it was in that moment of complete despair that his kids gave him a reason to keep going.
His son, Jonathan, came up to him and asked the one question on earth that no parent ever wants to hear. And the narrator, he tried his best to sound confident, to reassure him that they were going to make it, even though he didn't believe it himself.
And Jonathan's response just left his father speechless. This wasn't just a kid trying to be brave. It was a statement of love so pure, so profound, that it just changed everything. The fight wasn't just about surviving anymore. He had to beat the sea, not for himself, but for them.
Their only shot was to reach one of two tiny islands, just little specks on the map a few hundred kilometers away. After he did his best to figure out where they were, he realized how insane the odds were. They were looking for a 65-kilometer-wide island in an area of 150,000 square kilometers of open ocean. They were, quite literally, searching for a pinprick in the vast ocean.
Their main compass was gone. Using just a spare that wasn't even properly calibrated, he made his best guess. It was an educated guess, sure, but it was a guess. He told Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees, and he told him with this confidence he absolutely did not feel that they should spot an island around 5 p.m.
Well, he was so exhausted and defeated, he dozed off. He woke up at 6 p.m., totally convinced they'd missed their one and only chance and that the end was here. And that's when his kids showed up by his bunk. Jonathan asked for a hug. He said, "Can I have a hug?" Because his dad was the best daddy and the best captain in the whole world.
He scrambled on deck, and there it was, the stark outline of Isle Amsterdam. I mean, it was just a bleak piece of volcanic rock, hardly anything growing on it. But to them, in that moment, it was the most beautiful island in the entire world. The next morning, all 28 people who lived on that tiny research base cheered as they helped the battered family onto solid ground.
In the end, the narrator thinks about everyone who helped them survive. But he says he thinks most about his children, a 7-year-old girl who hid a serious injury just so she wouldn't worry her dad, and a 6-year-old boy who taught him what courage really means. And it leaves us with this final thought. When we're in the absolute worst circumstances imaginable, what is it deep down that lets us find a strength we never even knew we had?